Welcome to America's Commercial Real Estate Show, your source for market intel, forecast, and strategies. Hello, I'm Michael Bull. I appreciate you being with us. Our show today is brought to you by Commercial Agent Success Strategies. Look, these is some of the most fantastic training for commercial agents in the country. 21 one-hour videos, slide deck action notes, there's forms, you get instant cloud access. You can try one. If you don't like it, let us know in 3 days, get a complete refund. It's incredible training for a whole team or whole company or individual. Learn more at commercialagentsuccess.com. Well, let's get to our show today. Today, our show is going to be about retail. This show's about retailers, about retail property owners, and what a great big category. And retail has been doing extremely well for years. Of course, a while back, at one point, it was left for dead, right? .com is all over, right? But retail has kind of come back strong. But where are we? We've had some issues in the world, in the U.S. We've had tariffs. We had interest rate spikes. Where's consumer confidence today? What's going on with immigration? What's going on with retailers? Who's growing? Let's find out the information. The intel is here for you. Please welcome my guest. It's Tom McGee. And Tom is president and CEO of ICSC, the International Council of Shopping Centers. Tom, good to see you again.
Hi, Michael. Great to be with you.
Well, thank you. And let's get right into it. First of all, when people think of retail, sometimes they might see an empty big box. Maybe they see some malls that aren't doing well. Overall, though, how is retail doing?
Retail's doing exceptionally well right now. I mean, as you mentioned, there's a lot of times people will point out specific things they happen to see when they drive by a particular site. But when you look at the size of the retail market across the United States and are including all different types of segments, mall, open air, strip centers, et cetera, single occupancy, retail and the occupancy of retail is at historic highs right now. There's really a supply-demand mismatch. There hasn't been a lot of new construction in the retail industry really since the great financial crisis. And so when you look at it today, you're at the mid 90% occupancy rates. There's huge demand for space from major national retailers as well as emerging retailers. And so retail is at a very good spot, particularly suburban retail real estate, with the work from home phenomenon. And while people are starting to go back to the office more than they were over the last couple of years, there's still high demand for space and well-positioned space in the suburbs as people have more time to shop and go out to eat.
Yeah, we've certainly seen that. We're headquartered in Atlanta, and you go to especially the suburban markets like you mentioned, and the strip centers, the malls, the shopping centers, grocery market, everything seems to be really packed. And then sometimes you kind of pause, why is this? Where is consumer confidence today? I heard that consumers weren't as confident. What do you see?
Well, I think consumers, there's certainly there's a certain uncertainty around the economy, but to be fair, there's been a certain uncertainty around the economy for the last number of years. It seems like that's been a phrase that's kind of lingered. Consumer confidence has ebbed and flowed over the last couple of years. It actually ticked up over the last month. To say consumers have been resilient has been a little bit of a cliche, but a very accurate comment over the last couple of years. Consumers have continued to spend. Retail sales were up last month, greater than expectations at 0.6%, and pretty broad-based in regards to their spending. And I think a lot of that has to do with the employment market. It has continued to be strong. And if you kind of look back at all sources of data over the course of history, if the employment market is strong and people have a job and are confident in their job, they'll continue to spend. If you see weakness in the employment market, then I think you start to get very concerned around retail spending and consumer confidence. But right now, the consumer has been resilient, and let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that continues. Certainly price conscious, for sure, and concerns around inflation, and that's real, but resilient for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of the U.S. economy, right? It's consumer spending, and
2/3, yeah, 2/3 of the
yeah.
economy is consumer driven.
And we're talking with Tom McGee, he's president and CEO of ICSC, about retail. And Tom, what categories of retail tenants seem to be expanding or growing or doing really well?
Well, I think a lot of different sectors are growing, depending upon, new brands come on to the market all the time. But from a general perspective, I think discount retail, back to price consciousness, is the strongest sector within retail right now. Entertainment, restaurants have continued to do well as well. That's really, coming out of the post-pandemic environment. One of the reasons why the strength is so broad-based is retailers have really begun to use the store for multiple purposes. Historically, the store was meant for people to go shopping, and that's still obviously the case. But retailers are also using their stores as many fulfillment centers, and so you're seeing the store as really the hub of that omni-channel experience. And so ship from store, uh, uh, curbside pickup, et cetera, have become kind of commonplace where, it wasn't that long ago they weren't. And so, we all think it's a constitutional right to have free shipping, but it's not. Somebody is, actually paying for that, and it's the retailer. So to the extent that they can ship from store, that reduces that shipping cost. To the extent that you buy something online and pick it up from the store, that eliminates it. And so you're seeing, that's another reason why suburban, well-positioned retail does so well, because it's close to where people live. So the use of physical retail has become, broader than just for traditional shopping. And that's why you see the demand for space so high, because all types of retailers are looking for that space to fulfill multiple purposes. And we know there's a really synergistic relationship between online and physical retail that, if you have a store, your online sales tend to go up in that geographic area. If you close the store in a geographic area, your online sales tend to go down pretty significantly. So it's a lot of synergy, and it's the most cost-effective way to serve your customer.
So more of those stores are being used for logistics, for delivery?
Yeah, I mean, it's not solely, but certainly partly. And you are starting to see, just the store layout get impacted by that. There's more space that's reserved for pickup orders or to ship from store orders. And you certainly see even parking lots in some shopping centers have, more space kind of dedicated for curbside pickup, or to run into the store to pick up something that you ordered online, and have convenient parking places for those folks. So there's a lot of complexity around it, and you're seeing, retail centers adapt to that. It's really important that the landlord and the retailer, have a good relationship and coordinate around those types of things, because the logistics around it, need to be thought through.
Yeah. Tom, are you seeing any impact at this point regarding tariffs and retailers?
I think there's it's multi-layered. I would think from the consumer's perspective, there's certainly concern, and that's why I think you see consumers being price conscious. They tend to be more opportunistic in their purchasing decisions. If they see something well priced, they buy it immediately as opposed to waiting. We saw a lot of earlier shopping for back to school, for example, because of people's concern around pricing and inflation. But, so far the data hasn't, and there's nothing I could say that would be different than what we see in all the published and public information available. We don't really know what the full impact of the tariffs will be quite yet. To date, it really hasn't been noticeable, and we'll just have to continue to kind of monitor that.
Yeah. And you mentioned that occupancy has been strong in most markets. So I assume we've also seen good rent growth continue as well, right?
I think that's right. If you are the demand for, for example, some well-publicized bankruptcies like Bed Bath and Beyond, for example, that space had, generally speaking, most of those locations have multiple people competing for those locations. So while it creates headlines, the demand for it is quite strong. And when you have, significant demand for a limited number of spaces, the laws of economics tend to win. And so, the demand for high demand usually leads to rent growth.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah, it's a good point. We're marketing some retail properties in the metro Atlanta markets where some of these large boxes moved out, and we're getting immediate offers from multiple tenants with rents double what these
Yeah.
landlords were getting.
Because they're well located. I mean, retail is a fiercely competitive business. So, a retailer, the demise of a retailer generally has little to do with the real estate. It has a lot to do with other factors, merchandising, et cetera. And but that space, the viability of that space, particularly in a market like Atlanta, which is a growing market, a vibrant market, uh, well-positioned real estate is going to be in high demand.
Yeah. Tom, has there been any impact from immigration policies in retail at all?
I mean, nothing that I could add to that,
Yeah. Yeah.
from a statistical or data perspective.
Yeah. Another thing that we've seen in some suburban markets is some of these drugstores abandoning their buildings, but in a lot of cases, these buildings are getting scooped up and used for kind of interesting uses, right?
Yeah, again, it goes back to
Hmm.
well-positioned real estate. It always finds its purpose, and if you think of the big pharmacies and so forth, they tend to be well positioned, right? They're near large residential areas, large suburban areas, and so yeah, I mean, and the uses can be varied. It could be another retailer, it could be a restaurant, it could be healthcare. But again, it's generally those decisions that are made by the tenant are not driven by the real estate. The tenant that left or had to close the store, it was driven by other factors, whether just competition. Just again, retail's a fiercely competitive business, as you well know.
Yeah. Well, Tom, could you give us any tips for maybe retailers or for landlords, in the current market?
Yeah, well, I think for retailers, what's old is new.
Hmm.
So I think actually in the world that we live in, where technology is so integrated into our everyday life, that leaning into technology is really, really important. But particularly as it relates to stores and differentiation of your brand, the old stuff is still always going to be evergreen in retail, which is merchandising. You got to have the right product at the right price and customer service. And so if you want to be a successful retailer that has a thriving store network, you need to make sure you have the right merchandise. You need to really think through your pricing in an environment where the availability of information around pricing is at everybody's fingertips, and you need to be good at customer service. And consumers, really expect kind of a seamless experience in whether they're in the online world or they're in the physical world. So I think those old principles of retail continue to really be critical to success. From a landlord perspective, I think coordination with your retailers, with your tenants, curation of mix. It's obviously again going to be, it's old, but it's a staple. You need to make sure that you curate your retail center to the needs of that community that you're serving, and then you need to work well with your retailers. Again, back to this, integration of the online and physical world, and things like logistics and being able to park close to the store, being able to do curbside pickup in a seamless way. Those are competitive advantages for your tenants, and so you need to be positioning them. And also, from a landlord perspective, depending upon the where the center is located, what the parking needs are, there might be some additional opportunities, to build out on outer parcels, maybe mixed use, et cetera, which is obviously a big part of commercial real estate today, is the development of mixed use areas, and retail generally is kind of the glue of that, and oftentimes the starting point for a mixed use center.
Yeah. Are you seeing some of these retail centers put in charging stations, and has that been helpful?
Certainly,
Mhm.
yeah, that's been a trend. Of course, it's helpful because it's an amenity that consumers need and want. I don't think it's been something that has been universally adopt it. I mean, it's obviously driven by, market share for EV vehicles, and whatever the demand is in the area. But to the extent that you can do that, particularly in large regional malls, where people tend to, when they go to a regional mall, they're going to spend a longer period of time there, as they shop. That's just statistically true. And so I think that's a differentiation for a center to do that.
Yeah. And then you guys have I guess the biggest, was it the biggest convention in the world, or did it used to be the Vegas event?
We won't call the, I think the consumer technology show is probably bigger and a few others, but we're certainly the largest commercial real estate conference in the world, which is ICSC Las Vegas. That's the third week of May every year. And last year we had over 25,000 people there. We'll be holding it again next year. Next year we'll have some new things part of the show, one of which is a prop tech show that'll be built into the ICSC Vegas show. The advance of technology in commercial real estate is significant, and so we really think that ICSC Vegas is the right place to kind of have the convening of all the different players, not just in retail real estate, but all forms of commercial real estate. So we're going to have ICSC plus prop tech in our show next year. You'll hear a lot about it. There is no large national show around prop tech today. There are some smaller shows, but nothing of the scale of what ICSC can and will put together. And so you'll see that next year. And of course we have in a few months we'll have ICSC New York, which is our second largest show, which is the second week of December. And then in the fall, we have a whole host of large deal-making and networking shows, including in Atlanta, in the Southeast, in your area, which is October 15th and 16th. And we'll have 3,000 to 4,000 people at that show.
Yeah, that's an incredible show, and all the retailers and retail real estate people know about. It used to be called Recon, right, in Vegas, and but if you're not in the retail world, this is an amazing event. I remember the first time I went there many years ago, because we have a retail division, leasing and sales, and when first time I went, I thought, oh, this will just be people with booths giving out trinkets, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's people doing deals everywhere you look. They're picking out spots, they're writing contracts, they're signing leases.
It's a hardcore deal-making event, and if you're, it's not like a normal trade show or convention. And increasingly, to your point, increasingly the attendance at ICSC Vegas is across all sectors in commercial real estate. The finance community heavily attends that show as well. So, the banking community, the investment community is there, and so lots of other sectors that want to have conversations with people come to that show as well. It's a very the value proposition is everybody's under one roof for a dedicated 2-day time period. So we welcome any and all to attend.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think if you have anything to do with retail or retail real estate, you've got to attend this event if you don't attend any events ever. And I'm not being paid to say that. So.
You're not.
Yeah, Tom, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, that was a pleasure, Michael.
All right, thank you. And if you'd like to know more from Tom and ICSC, their website is icsc.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you will, hey, share the show with others. Pass it forward. If you need anything from me, ideas, tips, you need somebody in the country to do anything related to commercial real estate, reach out to me. My email is an easy one. It's michael@bullrealty.com. Until next week, be sure that you always lead, learn, and laugh. And join us for America's Commercial Real Estate Show. America's Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you by Bull Realty. For commercial brokerage sales and leasing in the Southeast U.S., contact our show host by email at michael@bullrealty.com. By Commercial Agent Success Strategies, 21 incredible one-hour agent training videos. Learn more at commercialagentsuccess.com. By the 2025 C5 Plus CCIM Global Summit, the premier commercial real estate conference for networking, deal-making, and investment. For more information, visit c5summit.realestate. For more podcasts and videos, subscribe and visit creshow.com.